raised in the Christian church. I was exposed to Islam, learning up and being a Rasta for a minute, understanding African spirituality. I got exposed to my connections to the ancestors. Your ancestors will pull you aside when you ain't listening. I'm more of a spiritual being than some level of religious doctrine.
You're watching Seeds of Awakening. I'm your host, Amani Channel. I want to thank you so much for watching. In this episode, we have a great guest for you. We're going to take a walk on the spiritual side of life, go through a wealth of religions, to tell the story of this one guest who had a spiritual awakening, obviously, after he went through many schools of thought. But first, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you like the free thinkers and the esoteric knowledge we'll be sharing with you. Let's bring guests in. His name is Doc Ervin. What's going on, Doc? How you doing?
Brother? I'm good, my brother. Good to see you today, bro.
So good to see you. So let's take it back to your childhood. How were you raised and where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I was raised in the Christian church. My mom was pretty much Pentecostal Baptist. I had to go to church almost every Sunday. I remember listening to Frederick K. Price in the house and, all of that. Reverend Ike.
Yep, I know about
with the
Reverend
prayer,
Knight.
yeah, with the prayer cloths and, all that. And I went to a Catholic church.
Okay.
I'm as well because I went to Catholic school. So I had my experience with all the masses and, sometimes I would go like, well, can I just go to mass instead of going to, Baptist church, being there for 4 or 5 hours and mass was over in 45 minutes. um, then from there, uh, just growing up from the beginnings of hip hop, growing up in Brooklyn, some of the teachers from the Five Percenters with,
Mhm.
I was exposed to Islam through friends and stuff like that. So I was able to open up myself to getting the Quran, understanding what my mathematics were. I went through that whole small phase in life. And then as I moved to Atlanta because I attended Morehouse College, I got exposed to other faiths. Started to grow my hair, uh, started, learning up and being a Rasta for a minute. Um, that spoke to me for a second. And then as I was exposed to, because I was, before I settled on being an education major, I was a history major and also understanding African spirituality. That's when I got exposed to my connections to the ancestors, understanding what Yoruba was, learning about the different religions and practices and beliefs of some of my friends who either, because I lived in the West End, which was really cool, besides just
Mhm.
going um, to the AUC and understanding what their faiths are. Um, then I transformed from understanding that, went through uh, a small Hebrew Israelite process and understanding what was missing in life was basically um, African peoples in Christianity
Mhm.
and understanding the true nature of just learning where Christianity came from and its origins. Really, the first Christians were in Ethiopia. Um, Understanding from my Hebrew Israelite background, Yahshua instead of the name Jesus and the etymology in that. Um, I started peeking into uh, Yahshua's walk or Jesus's walk, and I got exposed to information and understanding that in the Bible there's a big gap. There's his birth, and all of a sudden he's 33 years old. So
Right.
I got curious and like trying to like where was he in between those years in life?
What
So
Egypt? How about Egypt? He was in
yeah,
maybe
exactly. So yeah, I
India.
studied the Medu Netter and understanding coming down to Morehouse College, I was a little bit of rebellion. So, I started, getting exposed to the Medunetter and understanding, how the story and the resurrection and all that stuff was the same story, whether it was Krishna, whether it was, the story of Isis and Horus. And I'm not taking away from anything in Christianity, because I think the lesson of Jesus, the lesson of love, is really what this thing is really all about.
Mhm.
I couldn't Christian dogma just didn't speak to my spirit, didn't speak to my soul.
So it sounds like
Um,
you were searching for something. What were you searching for? Like you were raised a certain way, and then you started going on this
I
search for
think
the
I
knowledge. What
think
were you
for
looking for?
me, the hypocrisies were a big thing for me. And without exposing, all of my business, I saw the hypocrisies within my own family. I
Mhm.
saw the hypocrisies within the own church. I saw the judgment. You know, I was just raised with all hell, fire, and brimstone. You
Yep.
know what I'm saying? And then, once none of that spoke to my spirit, um, I had to understand through all, I had to understand that this religion thing and this spiritual walk is just nothing but languages.
Mhm.
Nobody has the one correct answer. Um, I still pull from uh, some of my, I guess, Christian faith, some of my Islamic faith, and really they're all one and the same. Um, just speaking different languages. Um, how I ate at one point in time and took care of my temple came from my Rastafarianism. Um, I was just seeking answers um, to, I guess, find my attraction or my connection to creation. Um, so it's funny. I, as I continued my journey, I also became to understand that the essence of the female spirit was also missing.
In the
Like
Bible, right?
in the Bible,
In the
the
God deity, it's always talk about father and not the mother.
exactly.
Mhm.
So I had a problem with that. Um, so I had to. It took a minute. It took decades for me to understand the duality, not only in nature but nature and spirit, and understanding that if we're going to talk about creation and being about creator, there has to be a duality that exists. Um, and it's funny. My brother Otis Morse the third, who I went to Morehouse with, now is a pastor, just like his dad. He just gave a sermon about, and he did it tongue in cheek, poking the finger in the eye of, you know, Christians and understanding the transgender nature of God.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that went over a lot of folks' heads. And of course, folks had, some problems with it. But he was speaking, he's basically coming from where I was coming from. I was like, there was something missing in all this. And then also understanding Buddhism also showed me that creation is within me. I'm responsible for my own happiness. Um, and then from there, I just expanded, taking all those principles and understanding that I have my own direct source, my own direct communication, my own direct connection to creation, to this energy, to these frequencies, to understanding, my prayers and meditation. Like when I pray, I actually do pray to the duality
Well, I
of
always do. Yep. Father, Mother, God,
the,
Creator, God of all these.
exactly, you know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So, though that's very important to me because Christianity, I saw the subjugation. The subjugation, it was used to subjugate folks,
The world, basically.
the whole world. Yeah, exactly. And then, I'm sorry, I just didn't like white Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Something was just inherently wrong with this
White
white
man who was
Jesus.
born in Egypt.
Yeah, exactly. You
Raised,
know what I'm saying?
yeah,
The whole white Jesus it just didn't sit well with me. And we're finding out things now. Um, you know, Vladimir Putin allegedly supposedly has um these 1,000-year-old murals and stuff of Jesus and this Orthodox or these Orthodox paintings. And guess what complexion he is?
he's black. All the saints were black. Like everyone was
Black,
black
yep,
back in
he's
the day.
black. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny as the oldest Bibles in Ethiopia,
Hmm.
and just understanding, our connection to the Fertile Crescent and just what true history is. And then with Native Americans and understanding their connection to nature and spirits. And, it just opened up my eyes a little bit more and just realized that I'm more of a spiritual being than some level of religious dogma.
Right. So as you're going through your experiences and I mean, did you kind of go from one faith to another, or did you kind of get led to
Yeah.
one faith to another?
I went from one faith to another, you know. Um, of course, it started out with the Christian background. Um, and then once that didn't connect, I found, some teachings in something else. I think it was Islam. And then, once I realized that there was something um, missing for me spiritually, still in gratitude from teachings, I went through, growing my locks. My locks used to be all the way down to my calves. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And then I guess from Rastafarianism, I kind of backslid a little bit, went back to not eating right and all those things. Your journey is your journey. And
Exactly.
coming across being exposed through my brothers at Morehouse and in history and learning about African history and Black history and connections to the Medu Neter and understanding Egyptian history. And then that led me down a path to being I found a group of individuals, they're still family to me, that practice, Hebrew Israelites and understanding the Hebrew nature of who, I guess, quote unquote, true Israelites are, that Africanness and understanding, the etymology of the words and the things that we dissected in the Bible. So everything really was a history lesson, not
Hmm.
only for me from a physical sense, but also for a spiritual sense. And then as I got exposed from that, something still was missing. And then once I understood and started learning about Eastern philosophy and Buddhism, and that really connected with my spirit. And then that led me to just, I guess I consider it one step above my connection to this universe and connection to all things, my connection to nature, the duality that operates in the universe. And I realized that there's something deeper here than just each dogma that I've been presented with. So I went from like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I am where I
More
am now.
universal. Gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So do you consider any religion now, or do you consider something more spiritual?
Spiritual.
Okay. What practices are you involved in now? Like meditation, I would assume, and
Meditation definitely is the first practice.
okay.
Um, Sounds, vibration, um, fire breathing. Um, every once in a while, I do chant.
Hmm.
Um, I do pray, but I think my prayer has evolved. I have ancestor table. Um, I do give honor um, to my ancestors, uh, daily because I understand the wisdom and connection and the importance of being African people, what that meant, for us, and understanding that our ancestors are not only guiding us spiritually, but they're our angels. Um, you know, one of the many angels that we have in our walk through life. So I make sure I honor them. Sometimes I sit with them for guidance. Um, because Native Americans would teach you, and Africans would teach you, just ancient folk. Even in Eastern, the Chinese would teach you that their ancestors are the ones that are with you on a daily basis. So that's pretty much my spiritual practice, the duality of creation. I don't, sometimes every once when I say God, I sometimes I would just use creation. I don't even say I changed from the creator to creation because I understood the duality that exists within this divine being. And I also understand that if the main principle rule that they teach you in Christianity is that God created you in his own image. So what does that mean for me?
Mhm.
I
Ah,
am he, I am she.
exactly. So how did your family know you're on the spiritual journey, or are your family still involved in the church? How did they kind of look at you as you were going through your experiences?
That's funny. No, I'm very, see, uh, my children know. My children have a sense of understanding because I've exposed um, my children to uh, a few things. When I was, but I never let them I never let them just be attached to the Christian church. I always kept them away from that for some reason. My mom is still super religious, super Christian. She prays, I take care of my mom. She gotta let everybody know in the whole world she prays. You know what I'm saying? She prays all over the house. It's loud. It's Jesus this, some type of Bible verse in the morning to a text message. And I respect where she's at. You know what I'm saying? But for me, my family and my youngest son, um, he's been pretty much raised in Buddhism, so he has that understanding. And then I allowed my children to develop their own level of spirituality with, whatever spoke to them, because it's not my responsibility to impose my will on them when it comes to religious practices. I understand that, they have to have their own spiritual journey, and their own connection to this universe. So I kind of, raised my children with a little bit of freedom. My sister, who his father was Muslim, but she identifies with her Christian faith, I guess from my mom. And sometimes I have to, reel my mom or my sister back in, what I'm saying, with some of the things that they might text in the group chat and the family chat. I'm like, hey, what I'm saying? We're not doing that. No disrespect, but we're not doing that, you
Right.
know. So that's how my family is.
Let me ask you this. So how do you make sense of folks who are so caught up in like mainstream religion? Do you have any sort of feelings about them, or kind of you let them live and let live?
I let folks live. However, I always meet people where they're at.
Mhm.
And then when that doesn't serve me, or it doesn't resonate within my frequency of vibration and my spirit, then I also know that, this conversation is at this point and this conversation is over. You know what I'm saying? I understand that folks' minds are sometimes still stuck. Um, no judgment, but that's just where they are. Um, you know, I have a rebellious spirit by nature. That's what because I'm always inquisitive, I'm always learning. And I also understand the history of, I guess the African journey. So um when folks get stuck into this whole one world, this dogma, I just be like, okay,
Is
that's
Christian or
cool.
hell?
Yeah, yeah. It's either you Christian or you hell. And I definitely understand that there is no hell. You know what I'm saying? And we was it anthropomorphize, God into this, you know, it's Greek mythology. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
This man
That
on a
we
throne in the sky.
yeah, the man's on the throne in the sky and blah blah blah. So I understand that, and I'm more aligned myself because I do have people that I'm really deeply connected with that do have uh, who are still in their walks of faith, but they also have expanded their minds and understanding, what it is. you know, I really appreciate, my pops before he passed away. He was an avid learner, and I guess that's where I got it from. And at the end of his life, he went to a unity church. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? So because he understood, and he understood the journey, he understood the assignment, in my opinion. And then it's also dope when you meet my partner's son, just got married into an Indian family. And the wedding was huge, 3 days,
That's how they do it.
that's how they do it. But what was dope was, okay, here's where the dogma comes in. Cool. Because he's black, one side of his family, not my partners, but from his dad and stuff, we got to get that Christian in. We got to have that pastor in there, regardless of, respecting the Hindu and the Ayurvedas, and, um, we got to get that in there. And I did, I saw from the bishop that was there, I saw that Christian ego, that you know what I'm saying, we're the one, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But as um, the brother who was going through the Ayurvedic practices and principles throughout the ceremony, it was the same message. You know what I'm saying? Just in a different language.
Yeah.
So, and I hope that bishop, was able to recognize that, because I sure did. And then as after the ceremony was over and I began talking to him, like we like hit it off. You know what I'm saying? And then we started getting into uh that 33, that gap between birth and 33 years old, and understanding that there are teachings and there's research that Jesus went to India, that Jesus went to, you know what I'm saying, to learn. He went from Egypt, he went, we started getting into that. And then understanding that all this is really all one and the same. So I attract folks like that in my life. My partner, she's an empath. She's super spiritual. She, just like me, has gone through many changes um, in her spiritual walk. And I have to give it up to her. Women are more in tune with the divine than we are. You
I
know what I'm
agree.
saying?
They're intuitive. They're naturally intuitive. They definitely
Yeah, they're
spiritual.
naturally, yeah, all of that. So
Hmm.
I let people live where they live, and those folks that resonate with my spirit, those who I stand in community with.
So, is there anything you're trying to learn now in terms of your walk or faith? Or faith?
Of course, it's I'm more of an introspective journey, from now as I get older. Like when you cross over 50, you know, like exactly. It's different.
Yep.
Nobody tells you this. You know what I'm saying? And especially as we as men, you know what I'm saying? Um, as men, you know, we're taught and socialized not to be introspective. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm at the stage where I'm at an introspective stage in my life, you know. Not living with regrets, but understanding that there were life challenges and lessons that I wish I would have gotten, that, or how they tell you the things that I know now. You know what I'm saying? I wish I would have gotten at a younger age, but your journey is your journey.
Hmm.
And I also understand that having adult children, your journey is your journey. But the things that I'm learning now is being more in tune with spirit, listening to my inner voice, listening to the wisdom, because your ancestors will pull you aside when you ain't listening. um, listening and make sure that I'm paying attention to the wisdom that I get. When I sit at the altar or when I'm meditating, uh, or in communion with them. Um, Again, health, understanding that the temple that we're supposed to take care of, it's not necessary. Is the physical place is not the church. The church is within us. You know what I'm saying? Church is like, this is the temple that we're supposed really now getting into the late practice of really, I have to honor this temple. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm getting into now, honoring my temple, honoring that and I'm always seeking knowledge and always seeking to try to go higher if possible, you
So
know?
let me ask you this, because obviously we're humans living a spiritual experience here, or spiritual beings living a human experience rather. How do you
Mhm.
balance sort of that philosophy in with all the events happening in the world or the political? How do you balance all that?
It's hard, man. I can honestly tell you that it's a really hard journey. And for though with everything that's going on in the world right now, I think the world's going through a cleansing. I think nature is cleansing. Mother Earth is going to cleanse itself at several points in time. Um, you really have to tap into your spirituality, and you also have to protect your peace because with technology and our phones and doom scrolling and just taking in all the information and being have to cipher through what's BS and what's not, and, it
What's
can
AI
weigh
these
heavily.
days? What's AI? And
AI and deep fakes, it can really, weigh on your spirit.
Mhm, mhm.
And so the balance that I have, and I'm a news junkie. I have I don't watch the local news and stuff per se, but again, I'm always boom, boom, boom. I'm ciphering. And the reason why I do that is not only for myself, but I have adult children who have children. I'm a grandfather. And now we have monthly meetings, via Zoom and stuff. So I can educate them on certain things that I come across, also listen to them and what they're bringing to the table, and how we can make decisions how to move in this new world that we live. All right, because this is a new experience that we live in. I think things will get worse and stuff like that. I'm sure in some perspectives, possibly, but there again, we gotta it's time to go within now. It's time to be in community with those who are of like-mindedness, all right,
Mhm.
who can step in one accord. That's what helps with the balance. I'm in community with folks who are like me. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? My partner, she grounds me because she doesn't want to take in all that information, right?
Yeah, I used to
But
work. I know what you mean because I used to work in the news, and it's very consuming. It
yeah,
can be very
yeah, she
consuming.
doesn't want she doesn't want to take in all that.
I say turn off the
But
TV is what I say.
she turns off the TV. She
Yep.
turns, like all of that. And she's teaching me something about, I've always, like for me, I always slept with the TV on. So now with us living together, excuse me, my son just walked in the door. So if you hear somebody yelling in the background,
That's fine.
um, understanding what those frequencies are and what we're taking in while we're sleeping and understanding that. So she doesn't want to she comes to me for the information. All right, what's going on today, Doc? And then she tells me, and once she's had her fill, she
Yep.
she shuts it off. You know what I'm saying? I may still be going, but then I take lessons from her and be like, you know what? I need to put this phone down for a minute because it's so easy to
It's so addicting.
it's very addicting. And
I
then
mean,
you get
I'm
mad.
straight up, I'm addicted. I told my wife,
Yeah. I'm
this
like,
woman
yo,
has me
don't you
hooked.
see this? And this is human rights abuse. And, how can folks do this? And, you know,
DEI,
and
what's DEI? They're trying to take our rights away and erase us from the history books. And yeah, it's crazy.
right, all that. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's part of the reason why I pull my family meetings once a month because I still, my oldest son is 33, my youngest is 14. And, their lives are different. How they were raised was different. And with this dude who's 14, who just walked into the house, I have to make sure that I'm giving him knowledge itself because everything around him is being erased, you know, from to this one world view of white Christian nationalism, in this country. Um, so I have to make sure that I'm giving him the history lessons. I'm gonna have to make sure that he stays in touch with his Buddhist practices and understand what he needs for that. And he's a teenager, so he goes through teenage things and stuff. And then my older children, I make sure I give them what they can take, and then I also let them make decisions for themselves. But to go back to answering your question, I have to stop. I have to meditate. I have to be around water.
Mm,
I have a mini fountain that I love to meditate to. I have I meditate a lot in the shower. You know what I'm saying? So, I have to have water. Water, I'm Pisces, and that water is grounding for me. You know what I'm
gosh.
saying? So that's what I navigate this space in the world and go through the addiction of trying to see what's going on and be like, I have to get back to that. And I have to thank my partner in that regards because she stays grounded. Crystals, you know what I'm
Yep.
saying? she stays grounded. And that rubs off on me.
Having a spouse is definitely a blessing because my wife isn't as spirit, like she's not as in I'm gonna say how I want to say it. She
You gotta be
isn't,
careful.
yeah, no, I don't want to say it. She isn't on my level, but she still appreciates like my perspective on life, I'll say.
Mhm.
But
Well,
she's very
each one
intuitive.
teach one.
Exactly.
Each one
Exactly.
teach one. And you, how long you been married?
Oh, a long time, like I don't even know, like 20, 23 years.
Okay, yeah. Y'all together. I'm
Oh
saying y'all
yeah.
ain't going nowhere.
Yep.
Then, she will teach you things about yourself, like I'm sure she has. And then she eventually, you guys are equally yoked in some perspective. And whatever, and even though your yokeness might be here, she might be here right now. Eventually that balances out. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying, in your relationship. She'll come up and she'll have her own understanding in her own due time.
Exactly. So we're kind of out of time now, but let me ask you this because I ask all my guests a few hot seat questions. What would be your
Hmm.
definition of a spiritual awakening?
Really understanding and coming into fruition of what your true nature is, mentally, physically, and spiritual. I think all three have to be. That's a spiritual awakening because I don't think one happens without the other.
What's the most important or valuable lesson have you learned in life so far?
Don't take anything personal.
That's a good one. Last question is, what would be your advice to someone who's going through a spiritual awakening? They're starting to question things, they're starting to feel a little different about life. What would you say to them?
Always follow your heart, your gut. Always vibe. I believe in the law of attraction. What is meant for you is for you. And once that vibration resonates within your spirit, it's for you. Um, and it's okay to question. Okay for you to go, wait a minute, that ain't right. Um, it's okay for you not to accept, I guess, the teachings and stuff that you've been socialized and taught. It's okay to question those things. It's okay to even question creation. Like, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? And you can't live in fear of all that. You know what I'm saying? And if you stay in touch, listening to your heart, your spirit, your divine self, your inner self, you'll come up with the answers and stuff that you need. Hope that
Doc-
answers it.
Dr. Mia, is someone who wants to connect with you or ask you questions, or is there a website or social media where people can connect with you?
On Instagram, my Instagram is DJ Doc22. I'm a chef, so you might see food. I'm also a DJ. I've been a DJ in Atlanta for over 30 years. Um, so you can connect with me there. My website is www.goodeats with a Z, goodeatsbydoc.com. On Facebook, it's Doc Ervin, DocErvin.
Doc, I want to thank you so much for spending a few moments with us, for sharing your story, and good luck to everything that you have coming to you in the future.
Hey, brother, I appreciate you having me, man. It's been a great conversation.